in the first part, we talked about how we can reclaim our image and reclaim our destiny. So my guests, Sherry and Robin, we're going to talk in this second segment. We're going to tell our testimonies of how God brought us through and how we experienced abuse. And so hopefully someone listening will get help and deliverance from it. So I'll start with Sherry.
Uh, well, I guess my story kind of started when I was probably about maybe 8 years old. There was this man who he was blind, and so from time to time I would go to his place to just help him with little chores, go to the store to run, little errands for him. And I remember one day he called me to him and he said, "Come here, come sit on my lap." And within myself, something did feel strange about it, but for some reason, I did. And when I did, I remember he held me and he kissed me on my mouth. And then he began to unzip his pants. And at that point, I just got up and I ran. And I never went back. I think that that was probably the sort of the where the door opened. And then some months later, I had an uncle who did sexually molest me. And it's very interesting. I remember last night we were talking about how sometimes when you've experienced that, it appears that almost there's this target on you where it seems like the spirit, is following you. There were situations after situations where, I'm sitting down and I'm thinking about occasions where there was one occasion where I remember going to the post office to get mail from the post office. And it's sort of we had to actually walk from where I lived to the post office. And I remember someone I knew asking them for a ride because, it's quite a distance. And I remember on the way back, he all of a sudden veered off the road going into some wooded area. And I'm like, where is he going? What is he doing? And, I immediately got off the bicycle and asked him what I was going to give him. But luckily, I was very fast. I was a very fast runner as a child, so I was able to escape that situation. But, even as I sit and I reflect on my life, it just seemed like there were situations after situations where people around me were like perverted or, when I was in high school, I remember boarding the bus trying to go to school and having these old men hit on me and things like that. So it just seemed as though this thing, it's almost as if there is a target saying, try this with me, try to take advantage of me. But from that, I think that's where the spirit of rejection entered my life and began to kind of shape me. Because the story that I told myself, going back to, this thing about re-imaging yourself, is that I wasn't valuable. This person does not see me as being valuable because if they did, this would not happen to me. And so that rejection from that led to me coming to a place where I was destructive. I almost wanted to give up. So it wasn't even just that, but it was additional issues from, my childhood dealing with rejection that I felt in the home, that I felt even at school because I was teased, bullied at school. And I remember one day when I came to a place where I just said, God, the pain is too much. The shame is too much. I would cry night and day, night and day. And I don't know, you have to be in that place to really understand what I'm talking about. Where you're so depressed that it begins to even manifest on your face physically. I remember I showed up to a relative's house and she had to look twice. Like, what happened to you? She was looking at my face, but she could not recognize me. That is how much I was in deep grief, deep shame, deep depression, where you're crying, every night to the point that sometimes you cannot breathe. You're grasping for air. And I remember I came to a place where I said, God, this is just too much. And I was 15 years old. I was in my room. I remember in my bedroom, I had a radiator, and on top of my radiator, I had this mirror. So whenever I would dress to go to school, I would just look to make sure that everything was okay. And I remember the day that I said, God, I just can't take this anymore. And this is it. I had some pills on my dresser because I had two of my tooth extracted, and I had a lot of antibiotics because I hate pills. But I dumped all of the pills in my hand, and I remember lifting it to my mouth. And just as I was about to put the pills in my mouth, I just heard this loud voice, "Stop." It was so loud that immediately I stopped. And then he said, "Look at yourself." And I turned and I looked at myself in the mirror that I had on my radiator. And he said these words, "I am going to change you, and you will never be the same again." And in that moment, I felt the love of God. It was almost like cool water just washing over me. And I cannot say that after that situation everything was perfect, but I had never been that low again. For somebody who is listening to me this morning who is on the verge of giving up, you may not hear the audible voice of God, but He's speaking to you through me this morning. He's saying, don't give up. The world needs your contribution. Maybe you have the cure for cancer. The world needs you. I know that sometimes you can be so rejected that you feel as though even the world rejects you. You don't belong here. But the devil is a lie, and that is a deception of the enemy. We need you. Your family needs you. This world needs your contribution. Yes. Don't give up.
Yes.
You will live to smile again. I know you cannot see light at the end of the tunnel, but take it from me, there is light. You can fulfill your dreams in spite of what you have been through. It's hard to see, but give God a chance. Give yourself a chance to experience joy, to experience freedom, to experience true happiness. I'm telling you, it is possible. And God is waiting to do that for you. He did it for me, and He will do it for you, because He's not a respecter of persons.
Amen. Wow, what a powerful testimony. I hope you delivered by that. I also have Robin, my second guest, share her testimony of abuse and how she got delivered.
Abuse entered in my life in a very early age. I don't remember a time where I wasn't being abused, or where I wasn't being bullied, or wherever I went, as whether it was in school, at home, or I never felt safe. I always felt like, as I shared last night, that it was a target on my back, and saying that, I'm an easy target. And in school, I was bullied. In school, I was sexually assaulted. Even in my own home, where there was a babysitter who, and I was a very young age. I think I was about 2, and where will have me with a family member, and to where that that lust, that sexual assault or abuse began in my life. So and then it just entered all through school. I mentioned last night that at one time on a field trip that it was a boy on the bus who wanted me to kiss him, and I didn't want to kiss him, so he slapped me. There were other times when the same situations will occur, and I began to think that no didn't mean anything, that it was wrong for me to say no or to stand up for myself. So in that, I began to withdraw, and just that I didn't have a right to say no, that I couldn't be who I wanted to be, that I had to do what someone else wanted me to do, whether I wanted to do it or not. So, and then even in my marriages, there was abuse. There was a time in one situation where the former spouse came into the home after taking our son to his parents' house, and he just had this strange look on his face, and I knew something wasn't right, but I just didn't know what it was. And when he came in, he started just looking around, and he went into the closet and going through the closet and going through the hangers. And he pulled off a hanger, a wooden hanger, and he was trying to take it apart. It was taking the hook out. And when he couldn't do that, he took it to the side and he tried to get a wire hanger and started to take that apart. But in the meantime, doing this, he was also putting gloves on his hands. And when I tried to, the closet door was next, not far from the bedroom door. And I tried to make an exit out of the bedroom door, but he blocked me. And he told me I wasn't going anywhere. And he took his fist and he began to punch me in my chest. And when he hit me in my chest, I fell to the floor. And when I got up, he hit me again. And he said, each time you get up, I'm going to hit you as though you were a man.
Jesus.
And so he hit me again for the last time, the third time, and I laid on the floor and I didn't move. But when I fell on the third time, I fell on my left hand, breaking two of my fingers. But when I was laying in the floor, I could hear, do not get up, do not move. So I didn't move. And at that moment when I didn't get up, he took off running. There were other instances where, mind you, I've been married twice, and both of them, again, were abusive, where I was pregnant. And I was coming home from work, and I got off the bus. And I kept feeling this eerie feeling. It's like somebody was watching me. And so I looked around. I didn't see anything or see anyone. So I proceeded to walk to the apartment building that I lived in. And the next thing I know, somebody came up behind me. And I was trying to get away as quickly as possible, but I couldn't do that. And so I turned around and I walked back towards the street and going to the shopping area. And there was a police car there just as I was walking, and I was going to go to the police car. But as I was approaching, someone was there talking. I said, okay, maybe I'll go this way, and they'll see the police officer sitting in his car and not move. And I thought I would be safe because I looked and I didn't see him. So I said, I waited some time, and I went back to go to the apartment, and he was there again. So finally someone came out to assist me. But at that time, I almost lost my child that I was carrying. And there were other instances where, even in a marriage, where I didn't have any rights to say no at this particular time. My husband or my former husband wanted to be intimate with me. And I didn't, because I knew that I could tell that it was that time of the month for me. And I didn't want to get pregnant. But no wasn't good enough. I had to, just because I was his wife. As though I was property and I was not a person. And we began to tussle, and I hit my head on the nightstand. And that were just a number of things that occurred in my life where abuse was on an ongoing basis. And even in not relationships, but just people that were in my life that I didn't even have a relationship with that were abusive. So it carried over from one area of my life into the next, from one stage into the next. And I didn't get away from it. But when God began to let me know, at the moment I felt like giving up, that I couldn't take any more, that the pain was too great, as Sherry said earlier, that I just wanted my life to be over with. I didn't want to do this anymore. And I just wanted God. I said, God, just take me. Just take me, because enough is enough. One doesn't stop. But God encouraged me and gave me the hope to continue to press on, that there was something better than what I was going through and what I had dealt with the traumatic experiences in my life. And God showed himself to be true, God showed himself to be a deliverer, and that as I decided to seek God for what he wanted, he began to bring me out. Not to say I came out completely overnight, because there are times I did go back, but God began to show me that this is not what he wanted for me. And he gave me the courage and the hope to hold on to his word, and knowing that, again, there was something better and that he had something better.
You know, after coming through what I went through, I mentioned how it's as though the spirit of rejection entered, and it began to really shape my life. And even until today, I would say that there are certain aspects of my personality where I'm still, sort of dealing with that. Rejection can bring you to a place where you're afraid to engage in relationships because you feel like people are going to reject you. So you don't even make the effort.
True.
And we know how important relationships are in order for us to get ahead in life. But that's one thing that it does. It can also put you in a place where you feel as though you have to do things for people to accept you, whatever it is. So how would you say that, I guess, your experience with abuse, with physical abuse, how has that shaped your life and the decisions that you've made in life?
Well, that in itself caused me to make very poor decisions, to second guess myself or what I knew was right, that because of the pain was so great that I began to even abuse myself. I began to be discouraged and depressed, and so in that I did so many things that were destructive. And because I had experienced pain for so long and the abuse for so long, that anything else outside of that would seem abnormal.
Wow.
So, and which was abnormal was normal for me.
Wow.
And the normal would be abnormal. So I had to, it was a steady struggle, because knowing that something was better, but not knowing the better, because I was so accustomed to the bad or the abnormal or the what is normal for me, because that's all I saw, that's all I knew. And I knew that it had to be different, but how do I get there? So God began to show me that in that place, I had to begin to really look at who I am or who I became out of the situations or circumstances or out of the traumatic experiences that occurred or that I endured in life. And that he began to, one day I was on the bed. I had injured my foot. I had slipped down the steps and broke 2 toes and sprained my ankle and my foot. And at this particular time, I was laying across the bed, and it was as though someone was sitting on me. And I know it's the Spirit of the Lord just had me in a place that I could not move. And while I was in this place, he had me reflect over areas of my life. And in that, I began to recognize that I looked for love in all the wrong places, and that I was merely just existing. I was not living life, but I was doing things, and he was showing me how my emotions caused me to react or do things that were not positive. Therefore, I was making these choices that were not healthy choices. And not only did those unhealthy choices have an impact on me, but they also had an impact on my children. And so in looking at that, God allowed me to see the importance of knowing that what I took on or what I accepted to be normal wasn't normal, and I had to let it go, and reflecting that and not allow my emotions to dictate to me how I would react to a certain situation because of the abuse and because of the being told I would never be anything or never have anything. I would always be nothing, and that nobody would ever want me. And so I had to begin to see that that was deception, as we talked about earlier, that it was causing me to doubt who I really am and to be distracted by the deception and therefore being depressed and feeling hopeless and feeling rejected and feeling abandoned and all those other things that come along with deception, because it just adds one onto another. And we just carry all that baggage and that weight and not knowing the effect that it has. And so I just want to encourage someone today that you don't have to hold on to that. You don't have to hold on to the deception or anything that someone has said you are, because that's not who you are. And I had to learn that for myself. And just to know that the deception is a trick of the enemy.
Yes, it is.
So that we cannot hold on to the truth and the image of what God wants us to be and who we are in God.
Such powerful testimonies. And the next segment, I'll be talking about, I'll share my testimony, and we'll also go and talk about how we can overcome sexual abuse and domestic violence and emotional abuse. Thank you for